Say hi, guys. Hey, 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 hey. Hey, oh, damn, Rizzler, risen up. Say hi, guys. Say hi. Hey, hey. Oh, oh, say hi. Say hi. Say hi, Zay.
Okay, so today we are going to be talking about intergenerational incarceration and how that affects your ability to generate wealth over your lifetime.
Okay, so statistics show that children of prisoners are 6 times more likely than other children to be incarcerated at some point during their lifetime. The Department of Justice has ignored the fact that 70% of children of prisoners will become involved in the nation's prison system.
So what exactly is intergenerational incarceration? It's defined as multiple generations of a family who become involved in the criminal justice system. So with that in mind, what do you guys, what kinds of problems do you think that intergenerational incarceration causes within families? Any thoughts you have so far? Yeah.
It's kind of just like a loop, like your parents gonna do it, then you're gonna do it, and then you'll either die from like something on the street, or you go to jail for the rest of life, or maybe they have a kid, and then guess what, now their kid's doing it, so it's just,
I think it could also cause, like, if it's specific to one side of the family or not, it can cause extreme problems within, like, the outer family basis, like the grandparents or the parents in question, like parent-in-laws, mother-in-laws, and whatnot. I think it would cause, like, a lot of stereotyping of, like, that person and their family, and that can cause, like, separation and isolation of specific people within the family.
I think it can definitely cause behavioral issues. I know from my personal experience, when it's like a parent who's incarcerated, it creates a lot of instability with a parental figure when they're supposed to be stable for you. So I think that behavioral issues can lead to more consequences later in life that could just lead to the child ending in a prison.
Do you guys think that a father makes more of an impact if he's in jail, or if a mother's in jail? Or does it not really matter if it's just still the kid that gets impacted?
I think it's just the kid that gets impacted. I think more so the father would impact the family as a whole. The mother would impact the children a lot, and then just the kid would be impacted.
I think that, like, if a mother was in jail compared to a father being in jail, it might be different, because I feel like the majority of, like, a stereotype is, like, a deadbeat dad. Like, you see that more than you see, like, a deadbeat mom, I'd say, or you hear about it more. So I think, like, without that, like, nurturing motherly figure in your life, it could cause more of, like, I don't know, possibly cause more problems. I mean, obviously, having your dad be in jail is also a big problem.
I think it's like what she was going off, also like both, like moms typically give like nurturing, like they're like there for you, I feel like mentally, but dads like are there to show you kind of like how to go about your life. Like they teach you a lot too. Like moms are nurturing, dads like teach you, and they're like a lot of growing up. My brother never listened to my mom, but he always listened to my dad. So it's kind of like like he knows where he gets his love from. He knows where he gets his like discipline and stuff from too.
I think it especially matters like the ages of the children because like at younger ages, I feel like women, like biologically are more patient or are made to be more, like nurturing, comforting for a reason. And I think that like especially if the child is younger than without like their mother, then I feel like it could cause more detriment from being with the father. But that's just.
So it's like pretty subjective. It depends a lot of factors. Yeah, I would agree with that.
So today, our problem statement is we will be discussing how the criminal justice system in America creates conditions for intergenerational incarceration and how it affects a person's ability to build wealth over time.
So just to preview our main points we're going to be talking about, we will examine the unproportionate incarceration rates in the country. We'll be looking at the effect of intergenerational incarceration rates and also examining the long-term effects of imprisonment, especially on one's career later in life.
So with disproportionate incarceration rates, these statistics are for men born in 2001. 1 in 10 of all men will experience imprisonment, 1 in 20 for white men, 1 in 5 for black men, and 1 in 8 for Latino men.
And this leads us to our first discussion question, technically second, but what do you guys think causes these unproportionate incarceration rates? Is it because of intergenerational incarceration effects? Is it the area in someone lives, or is it the education system or the lack thereof in education system? Yeah.
I think it's literally like all of those things and more, and if you take like into effect, like for instance, someone could live in an area with high poverty and they could also not have a parental figure to guide them. They could also lack education because of the system that they're already in, and all of that could just lead to them being incarcerated. It could also be for like the specific race of it being like white men, black men, and Hispanic men. I think that a huge part of it has to do with the stereotypes, I guess, that are already in the system. Understanding that even though a lot of these poverty areas have a high amount of black men or Hispanic men or whatever, they're being incarcerated for a reason. It's not only because of their racial identity. So,
Going along with that, I mean, I would also say it does have a lot of variables to do with it, but there's a lot. I mean, we think of incarceration, people that went to jail are bad people. There's also a lot of people that are in those underprivileged communities that they generally have been starving for 3-4 days, and their only resort was to go in and try to pocket that thing of ramen noodles. Does that make that person necessarily a bad person? No. But then they're gonna be stuck inside this revolving cycle of I can't get a job because of the community that I'm in, and the steal that sends me into this prison system. All of a sudden, I am a criminal in the location. It doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the influences. It's just how their life is.
It's a huge like domino effect. For sure.
Yeah, adding on to that, I think that this issue doesn't lie within the people that are incarcerated, it lies within the prison system. Especially in America, the prison system is making money. We're making money off of people working for really cheap labor and really harsh conditions. That we're profiting off of the fact that there are laws and policies made for black men to be more easily incarcerated, like loitering. So I think that until prisons aren't something that we make a profit off of, it's gonna be the prison's fault.
Another thing I'm here mentioned is like a lot of this, especially like the expansion of like the prison industrial complex, like came around with the war on drugs in the 80s, and that just like where cops would be pulling people over, that was of course, I mean we see it now, based off of like racial profiling and just like searching people because they can, because they have the rights to all of a sudden, and also just like policing more in areas, places where the racial profile is just more leaning toward one specific way, but a lot of that's pretty targeted there.
Yeah, and going off of your war on drugs thing, have you guys ever heard of mandatory minimum sentencing? So it's pretty much, it was invented during the war on drugs, so the people who were found with drugs, it was a mandatory minimum sentence, whether it was 10 years, 15 years, and it could just be even your first offense, but it was a mandatory minimum sentence that you had to receive. So it kind of takes, like, you slip up once and you have a gram of cocaine on you, and then you're in jail for the next 10 years, even though you're not really a criminal, you're not like distributing it or wholesaling it. So that's also another thing. It's not in the slideshow, but it's another one of those perpetuating factors that leads to incarceration and keeping people in the system longer versus rehabilitating them and letting them go for a minimal charge and applying one single charge to everybody. Yeah.
So then, like just asking your opinion, why do you think they like created that minimal sentencing? Like, do you think it was because they just wanted to keep those like low workers, those people in the system and like working for that cheap pay? Or
Well, it was designed for the war on drugs. What was it, back in the 80s or 90s?
Reagan's policy.
Yeah. So it was pretty much set in place and then never taken away. Granted, it's gotten, I think, like lesser sentences for like those sorts of infractions that used to be charged 10, 15 years. But it was just something that was put in place because all sorts of drugs were coming into the States and they were just trying to focus on getting the people that had the drugs and the drugs off the streets. And it just kind of stuck around and is impacting all these people's lives even nowadays. So it's kind of an outdated policy to still be using and a harsh one at that.
So for this activity, we're going to be looking at the factors that do lead to incarceration. So for this, just imagine you guys are investigators and we're trying to look into different cases that could possibly give us reasonings for what, or factors that lead to incarcerations amongst different demographics. So we're gonna need 2 volunteers. Whoever wants to do it. Okay. Anyone else? Oh, both of you. Okay, perfect. Okay, so just come up to the front. So they have cards. They are different people, just imagine that, and they're going to read off the cards, and then we're going to discuss what are some possible factors that could possibly lead to incarceration, if one is more likely than the other, just a bunch of things. So, for case number 1,
my name is Tom, and my dad has been incarcerated because of this. My mom needed to divide her attention amongst me and my siblings. I received less support during school and struggled significantly.
So, what do you guys think, like what are some possible factors that she just read off that could possibly lead to incarceration?
Well, her dad, or his dad is in jail. Or then their dad.
Yeah, that kind of.
Because
Or if my lady has to get in trouble and find things to get you in trouble.
he doesn't feel supported in school.
Yeah, that could be.
A single mother household, so they're not gonna have a lot of money, especially for, I don't know how old Tom is, but if he's working or not working or trying to find money somewhere.
Okay, let's read our second case, and then we're gonna put you in groups and discuss a little further.
My name is Chris. Growing up, my family struggled financially. They worked a lot, but we still didn't have many groceries. My school doesn't receive a lot of funding because of the community that it's in. My school doesn't have as many supplies, and many of my friends have dropped out.
With those in mind, let's count you guys off into, let's see.
Okay. So you guys can sit down.
Yeah, thank you, volunteers.
Okay. That's awesome. Okay, so we'll just do every 4. Sorry. So you 4, and then you 4. Do you guys know who I'm like pointing to?
Yeah.
Okay, and then you 4. Sorry. Yeah, you guys can count, and then you 5.
Or like if you wanna move in. Oh yeah, you can.
I'll join.
We're just talking about.
I didn't know.
And then, well, you guys are kind of getting it, but
Hi guys.
Okay, what do you guys think? Who's more likely to get incarcerated?
yeah. Okay, wait. We have a question, so let's just. Yeah, go ahead. Who's Dom?
We didn't change that part. It's Chris.
I thought Tom and Dom was
Okay, I think that Tom is probably more likely to
I was going to say Chris because he already has, Tom, that's the one that has an incarceration. Yeah, Tom already has an incarcerated parent.
other side of life is
Like, they're probably working. I don't think he, like, has an parent.
If you're going to be like your parents in jail, like, and they're in jail for murder, it becomes so much.
Chris grows up in poverty, they can't afford groceries, more likely to go to the grocery store and steal like some food to provide for his family, you know, like obviously he's not doing drugs and not doing things, but like if you're incarcerated, it'd be for trying to help the family, trying to get more food for them, trying to help take care of them. So I feel like maybe more him, but not.
But he's not gonna watch it on his phone.
He's gonna watch it on his computer.
Was
Yeah.
Tom, did they talk about
No.
how much money they had? I know that we talked
I'll
about
adjust
like,
it. I'll make sure it looks
right now,
good.
so it's maybe less, but
I think just the tone that it went by, like when Dom was speaking about it, or Tom, or whoever, whichever one it was. Just a feeling. Yeah. And so like he said that he's all of his friends like are dropping out of high school, and so like you're thinking that like are they all dropping out of high school because they have like another business venture, or are they dropping out of high school because it's a business venture that they shouldn't be venturing?
They shouldn't be venturing in.
Right.
Yeah.
What if the answer is
camera's too close. Get it up.
Yeah.
Both.
I'm just looking at the
You
muffin.
need to get the angles right. You can't be doing a straight. Do you understand? Tilt it up and tilt it up.
That's like an
Yeah. Get the angles right.
I don't know about the lighting either. You might have to adjust that a little bit.
You would
Go through phase 2. Give me a BBL.
It's an 05.
Do you think Chris over Tom?
I think that having an incarcerated parent.
You look like you're having a blast.
I'm having so much fun.
More like
Hey.
It's the cameraman.
So who do you guys? I think they're both going to jail.
Why do you think Chris is going to jail? Just because he grew up in poverty?
I think. Well, I mean, I think Chris is pretty optimistic. But
Chris is too cocky.
I think he might get in trouble. Just because he grew up in poverty.
Okay, let's just move around the room. And here's some points for my group. What do you guys think?
Well, we kind of talked about how we thought that Tom might have a higher chance of ending up incarcerated, just because it's already introduced to him if his father is in jail, and that might kind of normalize being in prison. Also, the lack of support he had from his mother, I think that is a really big factor, because he might start feeling more hopeless and his grades might start slipping, and that just kind of feeds into the whole cycle, I think.
We were kind of talking about how we think that just because Tom has an incarcerated parent, that doesn't really necessarily mean, like, we were saying specifically that, like, statistically it might seem that Tom, like, is more likely to end up in jail, but we were talking about, like, how the reading that we had last week or something like that was discussing how, like, kids who grow up in poverty have higher rates of, like, getting arrested and have higher rates of, like, getting, like, pregnant and, like, things like that. So we said that, yeah, we think that Chris is more likely to, and we also said that, like, from personal experiences that we've heard of, that we've seen it as more of, like, a be weary kind of thing if you have somebody who's in jail, and less of, like, oh, that's where I'm gonna end up, kind of more of, like, oh, I don't want to end up that way. So our answer is Chris.
It sounds good.
were kind of conflicted. We said, like maybe Tom because he has an incarcerated parent already, and what's it called? He doesn't really have support from his mom, so that could lead to incarceration. But also Chris because he grew up in poverty, so he can maybe steal clothes or like food, something that he needs, not necessarily like going to jail for being a bad person, but out of necessity.
We thought Tom just, it seemed more likely just with the incarcerated parent and just having school seemed like school and poverty seemed more of an issue for Chris, while Tom seemed like he had less of like a connection with family and maybe like want to look for a community or just get into trouble in the wrong place, things like that.
We also said Tom. I also brought up a point like if Tom was able to see his dad in jail, maybe that would kind of normalize and he would kind of see the environment of what jail holds and kind of like, again, like what you said, normalize it. So yeah, we went with Tom.
A lot of factors.
So, kind of a trick question. It's, as we've discussed, like you guys figured out on your own that it's very situational, and both of them have a lot of factors that can influence their likelihood of going to prison. That being said, we want to emphasize how influential having an incarcerated parent can be, or anyone in your family. Because 26% of children with an incarcerated parent will become justice involved versus only 10% without. So, yeah, both of them definitely have that kind of going against them, but emphasizing intergenerational incarceration.
So, on to our next couple of discussion questions. How does having an incarcerated family member, particularly a parent, impact a child and their likelihood of becoming involved in the justice system?
Yeah, let's start over here.
It increases the percent of going to incarceration by 26%.
That's good, yeah.
Well, no, don't give them that pass. I'm just kidding. So, maybe we should have worded our question better, but why is that? Why do we think those rates are so much higher for a child with an
The
incarceration?
lack of mentorship, I would assume, whether that parent is a bad criminal person going in and out, or that parent just can't be around their kid because they're in incarceration. That doesn't help anybody in that developmental phase.
Another thing I can add on to that is like psychologically, what does it do to a child? When like I forget one of you guys said it earlier. It's also, it doesn't just affect the children. It can affect like grandparents or uncles that might end up having to step up and become like a primary guardian of that kid. So, like I guess what you could go about is like psychologically or mentally, what does it do to the family members? Yeah.
I think that we were talking a lot about this in the group about how like a lot of the time, although it is the case that the child might follow in the parents' footsteps or whatever, and they don't have like a guardian figure to teach them what's right and wrong, but at the same time, a lot of the time, these children will take that as motivation to not be the same and not have to live the same way they've been living, and I think that's like enough for a lot of children, like psychologically, to go into a type of, I guess, relationship with themselves that they have to do absolutely everything completely without making mistakes or ending up where their parents ended up.
I watch a lot of Beyond Scare Street, where a lot of the children's like the kids that will go on there, either the parents are there or they will have like a family member in jail, and they talk about like, well, my auntie's in jail, like it's fine, I'm gonna be in the gang for the rest of my life, like this is what I want to do, and then they go in and the aunt's like, trust me, like this is, you think you have a gang, you think they love you, but they don't, you have no one when you're in here, and it's just really hard because like at the end of the show, like you think they're gonna change, and some of the kids just don't, like they change for like a month, and they're like, well, that's just like the life I want to have, so it's like kind of hard with that because like I do think like having an incarcerated family member definitely does impact them a lot. It just depends like what Sabrina was saying, like it depends. Like either they're gonna go left or right, like either they're gonna see that their parents in there, they're gonna not choose that, they're gonna do everything in their power not to even think about going there, or they're gonna take that path and choose a path or it's gonna be really hard for them to get out of.
I just wanted to add also, there's a girl that I knew in high school, and she ended up stealing my AirPods and like helping me look for them. And so she was like really, really bad, and she had gotten in trouble multiple times, and I guess they had a deal where if she got or did even one minor thing in school, she would end up going back to being incarcerated. And her whole family is very gang related, I guess. And so she just always thought that she had that to like fall back on. Okay, whatever work isn't working. My dad is like the head of like, I don't even know what, like I'm protected, I can do whatever I want. And then it got to a point where it was like she realized that one more thing she does, she will literally be in jail, and then that like kind of flipped the switch for her, and she like got the security guard to like come to my class door and like tell me that she was gonna pay me back or something, and then she just like started to do a bunch of good things. But I think that when it gets to like that point, a lot of the time people will do anything to like go back and change. So when it comes to the actual prison system, that's how you know it's not really helping people, because if someone does not want something for their life, then they won't do it, you know?
Going back to like parents, like her example, beyond scared straight, and maybe think of what if those incarcerated parents finished their sentence and were at home and provided that, like, you don't want to travel down this path. If they were at home, supporting the child at home, I feel like their likelihood of being involved in the system would drop drastically.
So there's like a difference if they're actively serving a sentence or have in the past and are at home now, do you think?
I do think also, just to play devil's advocate, that like when you're like a teenager and you have like all these hormones like crushing through your body, and like teenagers who like don't deal with like family members who are in jail and like incarcerated, even they like act out. And so I feel like sometimes like if you are in that situation, like you could just play that like victim complex, well not victim, like you are a victim, your parents in jail, like that sucks, but like you could just play that victim complex of like, well this is just the path I'm meant to be down, like nobody's gonna change my mind, like kind of what she was saying about the Beyond Scared Straight, how some of them like go back and don't really change, because I feel like it is a very subjective concept, because you can either look at it and say, okay, well that's definitely not what I want, or you can look at it and be like, well that's just the path I'm destined to be on, like that's how my parents were, so of course it's how I'm gonna be. And so, yeah, I don't know.
There's a lot of factors.
Adding on to that, I think the prison system and also juvie is set up in a way that it keeps people coming back for a lot of different factors, but I think a big one too is the fact that prison kind of provides like a routine. You know, you have a job, you know people, you know you're gonna eat, even if it's shit food, it's there, you know you're gonna have somewhere to sleep. And I think that when people go out from jail, like back into the real world, they don't have any more resources. They don't have a guaranteed place to sleep or guaranteed activities. So it kind of keeps people wanting to go back, especially youth who don't have a stable home to go back to. They would definitely, not definitely, some kids might want to go back just for that routine that they don't have.
Yeah, that's also a big point.
Yeah, adding on to that, like you were saying, the cycle it's made to like get them to keep coming back. A great example of that is parole and probation, because you can get released on parole without serving your full sentence, but and they give you a very strict set of rules and limitations that you can do, like you can't leave the state, you have to be, like if you're living in a halfway house, if you break curfew, you're gonna get reported to your parole officer, and then you just go right back to jail. So it's just another one of those instances of how it's just made to keep punishing people instead of rehabilitating them. Yeah.
I think also, I know families where if someone goes to jail, then the kids go and visit their parent in jail, and then some where the other parent is like, no, we're not going over there, you're not talking to your dad ever again, or your mom ever again, whatever. And so I think, both of those don't have good psychological factors, but like Lindsay was saying, and we were also saying it in our group, was just you become so desensitized to jail and what that kind of life is like, but then also on the other side of things, you don't have a parent and you don't have that extra support or that extra income for your family.
Yeah.
I was also just gonna say, like, adding on to what Willow was saying about, like, the justice system also, I do believe, likes to keep people, like, rotated in, which sounds kind of crazy, but, like, I know that from personal experience that, like, when you are a convicted felon and you, like, haven't, like, you go years and years, like, nothing on your record except, like, parking tickets, like, if you do something bad, like, they will just try and rush you through the system, like, if you have that felony, like, already on your track, they don't really care to, like, give you a fair trial necessarily, like, they just wanna rush you through the system as fast as they can, cause they're like, we don't wanna deal with this, like, you're already a felon, we know that you're not worth it, and they just, like, will do as much as they can, as quickly as they can to just get you back into jail, and, like, or back into prison, and so, I feel like that's also just something to note, is that the justice system itself does like to keep their people in there.
Alright, so moving on to the number 3. How does choosing or having access to a higher education affect your career path or your dreams as a kid? And how does that relate to the criminal justice system? Does it help keep you out? Does it turn you away from a higher job if you don't have access to education? What do you guys think?
Anybody on this? Yeah.
The community college I went to, and I'm sure other schools have similar programs, but the community college I went to had a program called, I think it was like Pathways, something like that, but it helps people coming out of jail and transitioning back into civilian life to go to college. I've had friends go through that, and for the most part they've done well afterward. But I've also known some people that went to that and they didn't do as well. So kind of mixed reactions. I've also had some really close friends who one did time for violent offenses, the other did time for drugs. The latter had a daughter. At one point, a daughter came to visit, and from Texas, and because she was going to involve a boy, she thought it'd be a smart idea to steal her mom's car, and because of that boy. And so, my friend did what I would assume most parents don't want to do, is she had to press charges, and my friend ended up spiraling back into drugs, and which made her health worse. So take them all out, what you all will.
Yeah, it's a vicious cycle sometimes. Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure statistically speaking, having access to higher education makes it a less likely chance to end up in the criminal justice system. But I'm sure we all realize that there's so much illegal criminal business also happening within the higher ups, businesses, business suits, and all that stuff. It's just not picked on as much as the petty crimes and little things that are drug dealers and theft and whatnot. I mean, look at our new president. Obviously, there's some sort of wiggle for these things. So again, statistically speaking, yes, probably is some form of lower rates, but in the end, just because you're going to school doesn't mean you're not going to end up faced with one of those decisions. And how many business people are doing cocaine on the regular? A ton of them. It's not a guarantee. Oh, you're a good person because you went to higher education.
That's a really big point. It definitely depends on where you live and who you have in your circle.
So are you saying that, like, if you have like that college education, you go to like a firm and have a job there, are you saying that like it can lead to more instances of like white collar crime?
Oh, 100%. Okay. I mean, it's not saying it will,
Yeah.
but I mean, the guy that's not higher educated isn't going to be working in a law firm, going through and doing some form of like cover-up cases or lying on some form of taxes or what else would there be? Hush money funds and what else did he do? A whole bunch of other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So some long-term effects from prison. Many that enter the prison system with low job experience or a low experience in education end up in prison, or general reluctance also exists in employers offering people with criminal history jobs. So generally, you find those people entering jobs like fast food, or for example, just jobs that you don't have to have your background checked as much. The time inside severs connections and time that can be used to gain employment release. Upon release, sorry.
Some more long-term effects. Prison can lead to mental and physical challenges while serving a sentence, as well as re-entry. We've talked about how it's a vicious cycle, and it's so common for people to re-enter after leaving. Some of the most common are depression and high blood pressure. And once released, access to healthcare and insurance, it's a really difficult process, and so treatment for these conditions are rare. So it's, again, just this cycle of being in there, not having good access to these things, getting out, having a really difficult time getting access, and it just feeds off of itself.
More discussion questions. So, how does the criminal justice system prohibit people from attaining careers and building wealth, especially into adulthood, and what could be changed to fix this issue? Speaking specifically, like, in the re-entry process back into society. Yeah?
There are so many careers you can't get once you have a felony on your record, and there's like no going around that, especially for working class people. Like, my dad even had trouble getting a job at Starbucks as a barista because he has a felony, and we have a president who's a felon. Pisses me off. Anyway, it's also really hard to like get a house because a lot of banks are going to be really suspicious giving you a loan if you have a felony, and it just kind of is really hard to get any sort of freedom or independence once you're out of prison, because everyone's kind of like staring at you, and I don't know. After you're out of prison, the punishment doesn't stop, and I think that by being able to like take felonies that aren't like capital crimes off of people's records could help the issue, or at least just limiting the discrimination on people with felonies.
Or just getting rid of the, like, have you ever committed a felony box? Like, when you fill out job applications. Like, that's a simple solution. Oh, you don't think that? What?
I feel like, yes, people learn from it, but at the same time, I feel like you should be able to like give a background to it, and like, just like, I feel like jobs should be more lenient to it, because I feel like if you committed a felony, sometimes like it's there for a reason, but like I get that people change and overall, so I get why they should keep it. I don't think they should get rid of it.
Well, what do you think about like background checks? Like, the whole point of a job is that you get background checked, so it's like if it doesn't show up in your background check, that sounds like the system's fault. It's not my fault, it's not showing up. Like, I feel like, yes, like you should be held accountable, but when you do check that box, like you're automatically grouped into a specific type of people, and you're automatically like being judged and stereotyped and like thrown to the side, because they're like, oh, even if like my dad committed a felony when he was like 19, and so like, and luckily like he got a degree while he was like in jail, while he was serving his time, and so like thankfully he ended up like getting out, and he got a job at 5280, don't know how, but he did. And then like, but that's like a very rare circumstance, and like most people who come out like can barely get any jobs. Like on this show Shameless, this girl, she got arrested and she got a felony, and when she comes out, she's like struggling to get a job, and she's like applying to all these places, and every place she applies to, which I know is like a TV show, but every place she applies to, they're like, oh, like you're a felon, yeah, like we'll call you back, and then they just like don't talk to them and never say anything about it again. And I feel like that is the circumstance in a lot of workplaces, because you're automatically just associated with being like a criminal and being a bad person, even if it's something like so small that could have happened when you were younger. So maybe if it was like specific to like in the last like 10 years
it's basically, I think now that you describe it like that, it's like you still have that like background thing. So like you're obviously not, like you're just not putting yourself as a felon. So I like the idea of like getting the whole background check and like why you did it. So I definitely agree with that. Okay.
I just feel like the box itself is very like you're literally putting yourself in a box right away.
Straight to the trash.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is like you guys think that it'd be a good idea to change like the degree of felony on like a job application, because you can commit second-degree murder. Think of it like that. You get into a road rage incident and then all of a sudden you have a gun and you pull it out and shoot the guy just because you were upset at him.
Yeah.
So like, could you change that box to say like, have you ever been convicted of a violent felony, or is it like a lower level felony like you were saying, but still have that box there? Because you could get out on a second-degree murder in 10-15 years. It's all case by case. So how do you guys think that maybe changing the degree of felony can impact people getting jobs? Yeah.
I think a lot of like what the issue is that we're kind of dancing around is like the prison system is not made to like reform people. It's just a broad punishment place we put people, and they just kind of waste time out of our society, and then they're like, come on back in, figure it out. So I think like in order to take like these restrictions off these jobs, like we gotta find some way to like add value to people in prison, because otherwise like people are still like uncomfortable. Like we're putting all these degrees and all these things where we gotta qualify. Well, I went to prison for this, and based on your ethical understanding of what you think about that, judge me that way. Instead, we should actually be trying to reform the issue.
Make it more of a rehabilitative system instead of just a punishment system where they're just there for however long and just sitting in a cell. Yeah.
To build off of that, and this is a super extreme example I heard, but it's super interesting to think about, and I don't know how much I agree or not, but you guys can be the judge of that. So last week I went and listened to that guy Carl Wilkins talk. He was the only American who stayed in Rwanda during their genocide, and then once the genocide lasted like 100 days, and like 1 million people got killed in 100 days. But then after that, like the genocide ended, and so then they had to like build this country back, and they had these two races, and they like wanted to get rid of that and like just come together as one. And they used this thing called what were the different words? It was like a transformative versus like a judicial way of like punishing people, I guess, And it was like they like thought of it, and it was like, we can either lock up all the people that committed genocide and make them like hate us more, and then if they get out, they'll just do that. But what they ended up doing was this transformative thing where they worked with them and they worked together, and they like had this big connection of like forgiveness and just like pride for their country and just like wanting to move past it. And like it seriously was like so like ridiculous is not a great word, and like but it's just like kind of like I couldn't even fathom it, because it's just like he gave the story of like this lady who was like his friend, who like one of the guys that was in the gang that like killed her husband and 2 kids, like he ended up like being like one of her best friends, and like they like got to know each other really well, and he would always ask like, why, like how could you ever like stand like be close to this? And she was like, I just believe in like people can grow better, and it's like, what am I gonna do by just locking him up forever? Like that doesn't help anything. I just wanna like help him change and become a better person and stuff. And then another thing that they were saying was like, if I'm gonna forgive for this, then I have to like forgive everyone. I can't just like pick and choose and be like, I forgive like the greater thing, but not the person who just killed my husband or whatever, So yeah, I don't know, I kind of went off topic, I guess, but it was just super interesting thinking about that, talking about like a transformative type of system, and just like, I don't even know how that would work, but just like the idea of it is interesting.
Yeah.
Not to be off topic, but like, I think it was Norway, their prison system, they're actually like, have their rehabilitation programs there, and actually like, it's doing pretty good from what I've heard or what I've seen when I did see it. So that's already in place already as we speak, so that's definitely something that we can expand on.
For the most part, yeah, I agree that the justice system does prohibit people. For example, the Menendez brothers, that's really hot right now. They're abused, and they're just push over the edge and kill their parents. And You know, yeah, something should have been done with that, but given their situation, you know, what do people expect to happen? But at the same time, when they were tried, it wasn't taught. Abuse on boys and men wasn't talked about as it is now. Um, and to go back to the point of the felony box on applications, I do understand that point. You know, some people do change after they've been incarcerated and all that. But at the same time, people who hurt a kid, you know, fuck that. They should have a hard time. You know, if you don't want to have a hard time after prison, should get your hands off the damn kid. You know.
Yeah, I agree with that because there's definitely like a lot of, I don't know what a good word would be, but there's a lot of limitations to how you can like change the whole system, but everybody's different, like you said, like everybody does something different, and it's a different degree. It's all case by case, but yeah, I mean it's just hard to know where to start changing stuff like that.
I just kind of wanted to go off the rehabilitation topic because I think that that's really important. I think that with prison, we're looking at the action instead of the cause in every single issue. Like, if you go to an AA or an NA meeting, every single person in there is going to have an insane story that you would not believe, but they're not there because they did that. They're there because of their addiction. They're there because of the reason that brought them there. So I think that in prison, especially even in cases of like child abuse, we need to be looking at the reason why instead of what they did. And that's the only way that we can reform people. And I think that in cases of child abuse too, like it can lead the parent to kind of like resent their child because they have this felony for something they did to the kid. So I think it's just really interesting the way we treat it. It's not beneficial for the family at all. It's not actually thinking of what life after prison is gonna look like.
Yeah, there's like no patience for like how you got there. There's no understanding.
Yeah, so it's gotta go off that point. You know, parents that are charged with abuse, even if it did happen, yeah, it can result in parent resenting their kid and further in the abuse. Having been in that situation myself, I was resented, and you know, a lot of people try to help me get out of my situation, but I never got justice for what happened to me. My abusers never saw a day of jail, and you know, honestly, that's not the worst part of it. The worst part of it is I have to live with it every single day, and I still have to. Even though I've been away from my abusers for a long time, I'm still trying to deal with what happened to me. Because you know, one thing that I was told growing up that I would never go to college, yet here I am in college, about to earn my bachelor's degree, and so some will say, oh, bachelor's revenge is getting back at them physically. For me, my degree is my revenge. So basically, screw you.
Good job.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
I just want to add on to that. Like, I think that's amazing, but like from the victim standpoint, a lot of the time people don't realize how many victims actually end up getting incarcerated themselves because of what happened to them and the psychological effects that the trauma had on them. Like, a lot of the time people will spend like the rest of their lives after whatever saying like, okay, so like why did that happen to me? Like, why do I have to deal with it? Why, you know, and they become an evil person themselves. But a lot of the time I think that I feel like the justice system understands that. That's why when it comes to like incarcerating people, you've never heard like, they don't really go, the government doesn't help rehabilitate the victims, but it helps like rehabilitate the offenders by taking them to prison, and then they're gonna end up going back into prison, and then the victims are probably gonna end up going to prison themselves because of what happened to them. They have no sort of
kind of another sort of off-topic question, but someone was saying it earlier, but like when a felon gets out of jail, they lose in 48 out of 50 states. I'm pretty sure they lose their right to vote, which I'm pretty sure is between 3 and 4 million people. You guys think and obviously in like light of recent events, it's a different conversation. But do you guys think giving felons the right to vote again gives them like some sort of dignity that they have, that like they're still a person, they matter to society, and kind of I guess you could say kind of motivate them to like do better once they re-enter society, or what do you guys think about that?
I think like I think like removing their right to vote like just kind of furthers the disconnect from society. Like it literally just makes them not stakeholders in anything that happens. So yeah, I oppose it, but like I also don't see like really the negative of having them vote. Like where are they gonna vote for like legalized murder? Like
Well,
is that the worst case
it was an
scenario?
example. I don't know. I don't really know the other sort of like rights they lose. Obviously, they can't own a handgun or any guns, but that's a different discussion. But do you guys think that like sort of? Yeah, see, I lost it.
My thing is like they're getting sentenced for however long, but like realistically, like with all these situations, like with the ability to vote and like having a market on the thing, it's like you're kind of like being sentenced like forever almost. Like you're not in jail forever, but it's also like, damn, bro, I did my time. I thought that was the punishment, but no, you kind of have to like face those things forever, which I'm sure like, you know, yeah, like Olivia's an example of like her dad doing something when she was like 19. And like, let's say he's like 70, he's like, bro, fuck, like I can't vote because I was like a, you know, not to call him an idiot, but like, you know, just as an example, like, oh, I just did something dumb when 50 years ago, and like, I still am like facing these repercussions, you know?
I think also just if you're contributing to society at all, then you should have the right to vote because you have your foot in the race, therefore you should be able to choose kind of what is going on in the country. But I also think that the legalization of like making everyone vote like they do in I believe Australia and New Zealand, it's illegal to not vote and everyone gets the day off and they all have to vote. I think that would definitely change our society a lot more as well.
Alright, so for the final discussion question, how can social institutions such as schools and community organizations better support families affected by incarceration?
I think a major thing that could happen to help change that is help remove clergy confidentiality. Because you know, there's this podcast I just finished listening to. It's called you can find it on Spotify and wherever else you find it. It's called Heaven's Helpline. Talks about the Mormon Church's cover up of abuse through their abuse hotline, and it's gone through. The hotline goes to the church's lawyer's office in Utah, which is the largest lawyer's office in the state of Utah. And the podcast mainly focuses on abuse in New Zealand, since we're just kind of talking about that. So yeah, I think removing that can be helpful because a lot of people, regardless of faith, will go to the clergy and say, hey, I abused my kid, or I assaulted my kid last night in bed, and clergy can't say anything to the because of that, of the confidentiality. Like we need to remove that, and so that people can get support they need. And so that people can be supported by coming out that are trying to do better, coming out of incarceration too.
Do you want to go this way?
Oh, yeah, that's good.
So the first one is the question, right?
We're on this one.
Yeah. So schools can help support families by either cutting down on their fees or not taking tuition at all. That's a dream, but God knows. Cutting them in half, supporting them what they cannot purchase, school can donate it to them. For example, if a family doesn't have the funds to buy books, texts, or anything, school can provide that to them and show them that doesn't matter if one of your family is incarcerated, you can lead a better life. You don't have to follow that path.
Yeah, I think all those points are really good.
I do know that there is an organization that helps a lot with people who are involved in like gang-related crimes and like people who are in gangs and like rehabilitating them. They're called Homeboy Industries. If you're ever interested, look them up. They're actually like amazing. But they do help like get those who are incarcerated or those who are involved jobs, help them rehabilitate them, and just overall like help them get back into society. So I think just having more organizations like that would really help just get people more on their feet and get people just back into society.
Yeah, that would be really, really helpful.
I don't know about like a specific policy that we could implement, but just having schools do their due diligence on making sure all of their teachers are trained in recognizing at-risk youth, recognizing, oh hey, so-and-so's been really quiet, maybe we should talk to them about these things. Understanding how to be that support system for these kids that don't have that, and then on the flip side of that, making it a priority to not be cutting out these after-school clubs and activities, which unfortunately when schools are faced with budget cuts, it's the band camps, the theater camps, the little things like that that do get cut. But if someone doesn't have that support system at home and they're in that K through 12 elementary program, I mean, that's their second form of support. So making sure that those teachers have those resources and not even just the funds, but just the ability to say, hey, after class we're gonna have a group to get together and watch a movie, just something where those kids can have that safe place to hopefully keep them out of the streets.
And going off of that, like especially sports in high schools, like that's a huge outlet for some kids. It gives them something that they love to do besides school, because nobody likes school. And so having like that sort of like practice every day after school from 4 to 6, it gives the kids something to work for. It gives them something they love to do. It builds friendships. So it kind of, like you were saying, keeps them like making smart decisions. And so like when underfunded schools get that stuff cut, then those kids lose, like you were saying, like one of their biggest support systems, and then who knows what's gonna happen after that. Yeah.
I think also recognizing and doing, like school specifically, recognizing and doing like the best we could to cut out the school to prison pipeline, like getting rid of that like specific like stereotype mindset that some teachers and schools do have on children, like especially like in low poverty areas. I feel like those schools, like they tend to punish their students more and like punish them harshly because of that. I could be wrong, I don't know like complete facts of it, but like because of the school to prison pipeline, how it's basically like they're preparing them for that like life that they're like, oh, you're gonna end up there one day, like you better, this path you're going on, like I've heard teachers say that before, of like, oh, the path that you're following, I won't be surprised when I see you on the news one day. And it's like kind of getting rid of that negative association within schools and kind of punishing teachers who do implement that kind of policy instead of like letting them continue to punish the students who are so easily like shaped by what people say to them.
I really hate like the labels. They're placed on different groups of people and different individuals who make a mistake, or if they're actually bad people. I enjoy how like the government or the military offers a solution or a choice to a lot of felons. Like if you have this felony, you're able to come to the military and get that felony off your record. That's a good organization or institution that helps these people who are faced with the incarceration factor. I don't enjoy how judges judge. You know, if it's something small and they judge you harshly because you're from this specific background or specific community, like it's almost not fair. I think the statistics, the 1 in 10s and 1 in 8s and 1 in 5s, all comes from the historical segregation and oppression in this country that kind of continues today, and that comes from that intergenerational incarceration that people deal with. So more organizations like the Homeboys. I saw one in the pamphlet here at MSU Denver that like offered ex-convicts to like go and learn a new skill in the trades so that they're able to go and find their own work. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I agree with you about the military, because my dad, he grew up in Chicago, and he did all sorts of bad stuff, and he ended up getting sat down in front of a judge at 17 and said, you're either going to go to prison for 20 years or you're going to join the Army. And so he obviously joined the Army, spent 22 years in, and then got out and had 3 kids and a wife. So, like you were saying, it's a good
choice to be given.
Yeah, yeah.
I want to go back to the whole like educator aspect of it, because I think that like K through 12 in a person's life is some of the most like significant points that someone can go through. But I think that like educators play a huge role in when it comes to dealing with like bad kids, I guess. Like I got in trouble a lot in K through 12, and like it's gone from things like I'd have to like in certain classrooms, instead before I can do something, I'd have to like literally call my dad and ask if I can like use the bathroom or go get water or do whatever the hell. And like I think separating like bad kids and like making them feel like they are okay, whatever, like you can do whatever you want, but like you have to go over there, you have to go like do this, you have to go do this. Like having that like separation, I guess. And it's so critical in having like a child think at that point like, okay, well you think this of me, so this is who I am, especially and like an educator's standpoint. Like the first time I ever got in trouble was in like 3rd grade, I think, and the teacher said next person to speak will get sent to the principal's office, and we were all quiet, and then I saw my mom and my grandma waiting outside for me, and I was like, oh my god, like my mom and my grandma are waiting outside, like I haven't seen my grandma in forever, and then she wrote me up because I spoke. So I think that's like really important.
Especially at those young ages too, like, cause same thing, like when I was in 2nd grade, I remember like getting a referral for the most bogus, like bullshit thing ever, and it was just because like my teacher was literally, which sounds so crazy and I'm probably not true, but like my teacher like picked people out, and it was like because I was, as you guys know, I'm a talker, like I was just like always, and so like because I talked so much in class, like she was very like specific and like rude and like harshly punished me, and I like used to get yelled at by my mom, and I think that's like is like a big reason why I like hated school so much, is because like growing up in those developmental years, I was literally like picked as like a problem child, even though all I did was like talk, like I just like talked
Right,
to people.
exactly. Like the whole like talking thing is like so big, and like educators don't realize how big of an impact they have on someone, and like viewing themselves at that point, like that is literally someone's like whole development of how they see themselves and how they're viewing themselves, so that's how they're gonna act for the rest of their lives. So,
Yeah, those years literally shape who you are forever. So that's really important.
Yeah.
I've been super lucky my whole life because of where I grew up. Like I was a problem child, and I did some like really dumb things, made some terrible choices, and I was super lucky. Like most of the judges that I saw were like, "What are you doing? Like, you're smarter than this. You can do better than this. You've done better than this. You've been a part of programs and done this and this and that. Like you don't deserve to do this to yourself." So I think those schools and those institutions and those sports help make the person give them a label that they can fall back on to not get in trouble. So a lot of kids who are in these low labels from the things that are offered to them, like sports and academics and music.
Yeah, and I was gonna say that, like, I do think that that's crazy, like, just seeing that exact example, because, like, I'm pretty sure, like, you grew up where, like, the Douglas County district, so, like, the Douglas County district is, like, a richer, like, if you're not from Colorado, it's, like, a well-off area, like, school district, as compared to, like, where I went to school, I went to Smoky, and it's like the Cherry Creek School District, which is still good. Like we still have like very well off like middle class schools, but like Smoky Hill specifically is like one of the poorer schools that is in that district, and like just seeing how like you were treated when you got in trouble versus like how I was treated when I got in trouble is like so crazy, because you're like actually like wow, like just witnessing that it really is, they treat you differently based on your income. And like I don't know, like we read something about it a couple weeks ago in our reading about how like they treat kids in the poorer districts like with that worker bee mindset and with that like getting in trouble mindset, but like if you're getting in trouble they're teaching you like critical thinking and asking you like why are you doing this. But when I get in trouble they're like, oh you're such a bad kid, like go to detention. It's like bro, what? It's just so crazy.
That's what I think is also like extremely crazy, because like Cherry Creek, like for instance, like it's not even the districts, it's like the schools, I think. So like the neighborhoods, that's how you know like people who come from like poverty, the statistics of them staying in poverty is like for a reason. If you think about it, like Cherry Creek School District is supposed to be a good district, but I went to Eagle Crest, and then it's like Rangeview, Smoky, and Eagle Crest, and then there was like another one. Those were like the bottom schools in the districts, and then down the street it was like a 2-minute drive was Grandview, and then Grandview was like literally ridiculously loaded, and they had like the amount of like I think my friend had like they had multiple like you know those dances and like the proms and whatever, they did those like literally all the time. They had like events for students to come in with like free things and like all that stuff, and I think it's crazy how it's literally like down the street, but it's a completely different neighborhood, and so they're just gonna treat those people how they like where they come from. Like that's, I think that's what this is.
And they get so much more funding.
And you can see it like from their housing even, like literally the houses that are 10 minutes away compared to like, yeah, it's so crazy. But even like at Smoky Hill they have like houses that are bigger, like it's just so crazy, like even in the schools that are lower they still have sections within those sections.
Because they'll
Like,
change
it's
this,
so
so
crazy.
the districts will assign a certain like path. From one side, like north will be like to this school, and then from one side will be to like that school, and a lot of the time they'll change it. So mid-high school they changed, so they took like half of the Rangeview neighborhood and put them in Eagle Crest, and so it was a completely different thing. They hired like 6 more deans, and like not advisors or like counselors or like any of those, but like the deans, they specifically hired like 6 more, which is honestly great.
And it's like this half of Smoky Hill is like a little more weary, but this half is like the richer side, and it's like, but we all go to the same school. Like that's just so crazy.
Did you like choose which school to go to, or was it like
It was based off your your address. And so a lot of the times some of my friends would take like an address from like an aunt's house or an address from like a grandparent or something, and then come to a good school or like go to a different school.
Going off of the counselors and like the advisors and stuff like that, I went to Church Trail, and I'm pretty sure we only had two counselors, and then I want to say about 8 deans, and it's just they have 8 people that are looking for kids that are doing bad things instead of 2 people that are there to help people through their problems and stuff like that. So it's a big disconnect.
I think there could be things that can be done to help support families affected by incarceration, like church food banks or local or non-church related food banks, stuff like that, to help filling costs of food. But also kind of help support the victims and things like that. We could also utilize things like classes on how to recognize violent crimes, signs of violent crimes, like domestic violence, abuse, because in those kind of situations, people often miss signs, and sometimes people see the signs, but are oftentimes too scared to speak up. I mean, that was the case in my situation. A lot of people saw it, but they're too scared to speak up because they're very much abusers. And so I think, between that and, if we heavily document any sign of abuse or report it, that could be helpful to help victims, well, to definitely help me out,
Any last points? Yeah.
And then the last thing I was just gonna say, like regarding like how the schools are treated differently is like, specifically my district, so like Cherry Creek is like it's called the Cherry Creek School District, so obviously Cherry Creek High School is probably like the most funded out of like the schools in that district, and like they do, and I believe, like, I don't know for sure like the numbers, but I believe they make like the most money, like they have the highest level of income, and like I like dated this one boy who went to Cherry Creek, and even though we're part of the same district, him and his friends, like, they would ask me, they'd be like, oh, you go to Smoky, like, you're probably, like, surrounded by the ghetto, like, do you know any gang signs because you go there? And I'm like, bro, what? Like, that's ridiculous. And they're like, oh, like, it's just, I've just heard, like, oh, if you're from Smoky, like, you probably have, like, a little toot on you, don't you? Like, you're a little ghetto, aren't you? And I'm just like, alright, like, I don't know, I don't think it's, like, from my school, I think that's, like, where it comes from, I'm just snappy, like, yeah, so I just think it's crazy that, like, even within the district, there's so, yeah.
That's crazy as fuck, cause literally, folks from Creek literally asked me that when I was at Smoky, man, that's literally crazy as fuck, that's crazy as fuck.
They're like, oh, you go to Smoky, can you show me gang signs? I'm like, bro, I don't know no gang signs, look at me.
No, okay, listen, I had a soul, and I was at what, wait, it was like, I don't even know, it was in the movie. And so, it was in Cherry Creek, and so our school, the girls varsity team went to Cherry Creek, so we were over there. And they were literally like harassing us, like calling us like ratchet, like go get new swim. And our swimsuits were literally brand freaking new to our first time wearing them. They were like, how old are those swimsuits? Like go get new swimsuits, like y'all are ratchet. And we were just like,
and it's like we're in the same district,
I live like 10 minutes away, bro. Like,
yeah, it's just so crazy that like you can have the same name, but like it's just so specific to your like economical standing. Like even though we're all part of the same educational system and we're all learning basically the exact same thing, you're still telling me like I'm worse than you, I'm more ghetto. It's like, okay, all right, you're right, my bad. I'm so ghetto. Get me out of here.
Yeah, if anybody has to go ahead and go, but we're gonna finish this up real quick.
Okay, so we have now discussed the disproportionate incarceration rates and why this is an issue that needs to be fixed, the intergenerational incarceration rates and how this can affect a child's life and the long-term negative effects after prison life and the person's inability to grow wealth after. And the U.S. criminal justice system creates the conditions for intergenerational incarceration, which impacts an individual's ability to build wealth throughout the rest of their life.
Sorry. Overall, we need a bold change in our criminal justice system. A good first step forward is to start treating prisoners as human beings, not profiting them from incarceration. Our emphasis must be on rehabilitation, not incarceration, and longer prison sentences. And I think our discussion brought us to this point well, that our views of people matter a lot more than I realize sometimes. So, thank you. Good.
Fantastic. Let's get out of here.
Oh yeah, we did a photo. For real, no, they were really cool with me. It was weird.
such a weird experience. I was like, oh. And come to find out, it was just white Douglas County. Still recording. Good job, guys.
Good job, guys. We really loved it.